Cambridge IELTS Academic Book 19, Listening Test 2, Questions and Answers. Please note that the original audio has been replaced with AI-generated audio. Right, let's begin the test. First of all, let's look at the questions for part 1. Questions 1 to 10. For questions 1 to 6, you need to complete the form. Make sure that you write one word and or a number for each answer. And the theme of the first part is guitar group. You now have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now listen and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hi, Coleman. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I wanted to have a chat with you because our friend Josh told me that you've joined a guitar group and it sounds interesting. I'd really like to learn myself.
Why don't you come along? I'm sure there's room for another person.
Really? So who runs the classes?
He's called a coordinator. His name's Gary Mathewson.
Let me note that down. Gary, how do you spell his surname?
It's Mathieson.
Right, thanks.
He's retired, actually, but he's a really nice guy, and he used to play in a lot of bands.
Thanks. So how long have you been going?
About a month now.
And could you play anything before you started?
I knew a few chords, but that's all.
I'm sure everyone will be better than me.
That's what I thought, too. When I first spoke to Gary on the phone, he said it was a class for beginners, but I was still worried that everyone would be better than me. But we were all equally hopeless.
Oh, that's reassuring. So where do you meet?
Well, when I joined the group, they were meeting in Gary's home. But as the group got bigger, he decided to book a room at the college in town. I prefer going there.
I know that place. I used to go to tap dancing classes there when I was at secondary school. I haven't been since, though, and I can't remember what road it's in. Is it Lock Street?
It's just beyond there, at the bottom of New Street, near the city roundabout.
Yes, of course.
The guitar club is on the first floor in room T347.
Right, and when do you meet? Is it at the weekend?
We meet on Thursdays. It used to be 10:30, and that suited me well, but now we meet at 11. The class that's in there before us asked if they could have the room for another 30 minutes.
Oh, I see. Well, I'd love to come, but I don't have a guitar.
Well, you can always buy a second-hand one. There's a website called The Perfect Instrument that sells all kinds of guitars, violins, and so on. I'm sure you'll find something there.
Now let's look at the answers for questions 1 to 6. So the first one, the man's surname is Mathieson, and he spelt that out. Number 2, level beginners. What's your spelling on this word as well? And same with number 3, college. So remember that in IELTS listening, spelling is critical. If the spelling is wrong, you will not get the point. Number 4, New Street, not Lock Street that they said as a wrong answer. Number 5, 11. You can write the word 11 or the number 11. Both are okay. And the answer guide said that if you write 11 a.m., that's also acceptable. And number 6, instrument. Questions 7 to 10. Complete the table below. Write one word only for each answer. You now have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
So what's a typical lesson like with Gary?
Well, he always starts by getting us to tune our guitars. That takes about 5 minutes.
Okay?
Some people have an app they use, but others do it by ear. Gary goes around and helps them. And while he's doing that, he tells us what he's going to do during the lesson.
Right?
First, we usually spend about 10 minutes doing some strumming.
So is that using, what are they called, plectrums?
No, we just use our thumbs.
Much easier.
Gary reminds us where to put our fingers for each chord, and then we play them together. Sometimes we all just start laughing because we're so bad at keeping time, so Gary starts clapping to help us.
Do you learn to play any songs?
Yes, we do at least one song with words and chords. I mean, that's harder than you think.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
That part of the lesson takes about 15 minutes. He often brings a recording of the song and plays it to us first. Then he hands out the song, and if there's a new chord in it, we practice that before we play it together, but really slowly.
Do you do any finger picking?
That's the last 10 minutes of the lesson, when we pick out the individual notes from a tune he's made up. It's always quite simple.
That must be hard, though.
It is, but people like it because they can really concentrate, and if we're all playing well, it sounds quite impressive. The only trouble is that he sometimes gets us to play one at a time, alone.
That's scary.
It is, but I've got used to it now. At the end, he spends about 5 minutes telling us what to practice for the following week.
Well, thanks, Coleman. I'll go and have a look at that website, I think.
Right, let's have a look at the answers for questions 7 to 10. Number 7, using an app or by ear. That's when you can tell the note just by listening. Number 8 should be clapping, 2 Ps. Then number 9, a recording. Notice the word recording is a noun here and not a continuous verb. And then number 10, alone. Moving on to part 2, questions 11 to 20. So for questions 11 to 16, you need to choose the correct letter, A, B, or C. So these are multiple choice questions, and the topic is working as a lifeboat volunteer. First, you have some time to read questions 11, 12, and 13. Now listen and answer questions 11, 12, and 13.
I never really planned to be a lifeboat volunteer when I came to live in North Sea. I'd been working in London as a website designer, but although that was interesting, I didn't like city life. I'd been really keen on boats as a teenager, and I thought if I went to live by the sea, I might be able to pursue that interest a bit more in my free time. Then I found that the Lifeboat Institution was looking for volunteers, so I decided to apply. The Lifeboat Institution building here in North Sea is hard to miss. It's one of the largest in the country. It was built 15 years ago with funds provided by a generous member of the public who'd lived here all her life. As the Lifeboat Institution is a charity that relies on that kind of donation, rather than funding provided by the government, that was a huge help to us. When I applied, I had to have a health assessment. The doctors were particularly interested in my vision. I used low-B short-sighted, so I'd had low-wear glasses, but I'd had laser eye surgery 2 years earlier, so that was okay. They gave me tests for color blindness, and they thought I might have a problem there, but it turned out I was okay.
let's look at the answers for those three questions. Number 11 should be A. He was eager to develop a hobby, his interest in boats. 12, the correct answer is B, a local resident. Or they said a member of the public. And 13, A is the correct answer. The other two were not a concern. That was the one he was worried about. Now you have some time to read questions 14, 15 and 16. Now listen and answer questions 14, 15 and 16.
When the Coast Guard gets an alert, all the volunteers are contacted and rushed to the lifeboat station. Our target's to get there in 5 minutes. Then we try to get the boat off the dock and out to sea in another 6 to 8 minutes. Our team's proud that we usually achieve that. The average time across the country's 8.5 minutes. I've recently qualified as what's called a helmsman, which means I have the ultimate responsibility for the lifeboat. I have to check that the equipment we use is in working order. The crew have special life jackets that can support up to 4 people in the water. And it's ultimately my decision whether it's safe to launch the boat. But it's very rare not to launch it, even in the worst weather. As well as going out on the lifeboat, my work involves other things too. A lot of people underestimate how quickly conditions can change at sea, so I speak to youth groups and sailing clubs in the area about the sorts of problems that sailors and swimmers can have if the weather suddenly gets bad. We also have a lot of volunteers who organize activities to raise money for us, and we couldn't manage without them.
Now let's see the answers for 14, 15 and 16. For 14, the answer should be B, 6 to 8 minutes. 15, C, if the lifeboat should be launched. And 16 was A, gives talks on safety at sea. He did mention all of these different things, so be very careful with all the wrong answers that are also in there. Next, questions 17 and 18 and 19 and 20. For both of these sets, you need to choose 2 letters, A to E. So it's multiple choice, but each question has 2 correct answers. And for this, so for 17 and 18, it doesn't matter what order you put the 2 letters in. You now have some time to read the questions for 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
The training we get is a continuous process, focusing on technical competence and safe handling techniques, and it's given me the confidence to deal with extreme situations without panicking. I was glad I'd done a first aid course before I started, as that's a big help with the casualty care activities we do. We've done a lot on how to deal with ropes and tie knots. That's an essential skill. After a year, I did a 1-week residential course led by specialists. They had a wave tank where they could create extreme weather conditions so we could get experience at what to do if the boat turned over in a storm at night, for example. Since I started, I've had to deal with a range of emergency situations. But the work's hugely motivating. It's not just about saving lives. I've learned a lot about the technology involved. My background in IT has been useful here, and I can use my expertise to help other volunteers. They're a great group. We're like a family, really, which helps when you're dragging yourself out of bed on a cold, stormy night. But actually, it's the colder months that can be the most rewarding time. That's when the incidents tend to be more serious, and you realize that you can make a huge difference to the outcome. So if any of you listeners are interested,
and now let's have a look at the answers to those questions. So for 17 and 18, you should have chosen C and E. Again, if you put E and C, that's also acceptable. And for 19 and 20, the answers should be A and B, or B and A. Again, they do mention the other things, so lots of wrong answers in there to try and make it more difficult. If you want to listen to that again, feel free to skip back and just check why those are the correct answers. Now let's move on to part 3. For questions 21 to 24, first of all, choose the correct letter, A, B or C. So again, multiple choice questions here. And you now have some time to read questions 21 to 24. Now let's listen and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hi Don, did you get the copy of the article on recycling footwear that I emailed you?
Yeah, it's here. I've had a look at it.
So do you think it's a good topic for our presentation?
Well, before I started reading it, I thought recycling footwear. Well, although it's quite interesting, perhaps there isn't enough to say about it because we put shoes in recycling bins, they go to charity shops, and that's about it.
But there's much more to it than that.
I realize that now, and I'm keen to research the topic more.
That's great.
One of the things I didn't realize until I read the article was just how many pairs of trainers get recycled.
Well, a lot of young people wear them all the time now. They've become more popular than ordinary shoes.
I know. I guess they are very hard-wearing, but don't they look a bit casual for school uniform? I don't think they're right for that.
Actually, I think some of them look quite smart on pupils, better than a scruffy old pair of shoes. So, do you keep shoes a long time?
Yes, though I do tend to wear my old pairs for doing dirty jobs like cleaning my bike.
I must admit, I've recycled some perfectly good shoes that haven't gone out of fashion and still fit, just because they don't look great on me anymore. That's awful, isn't it?
I think it's common because there's so much choice. The article did say that recent sales of footwear have increased enormously.
That didn't surprise me.
No. But then it said that the amount of recycled footwear has fallen. It's 6% now, compared to a previous level of 11%. That doesn't seem to make sense.
That's because not everything goes through the recycling process. Some footwear just isn't good enough to resell for one reason or another and gets rejected.
Let's have a look at the answers for these questions. 21, the correct answer is A. 22 is B. 23 B. And 24 also B. Next, questions 25 to 28. What reasons did the recycling manager give for rejecting footwear according to the students? Choose 4 answers from the box and write the correct letter A to F next to questions 25 to 28. And the reasons that you can choose for: A, one shoe was missing; B, the colour of one shoe had faded; C, one shoe had a hole in it; D, the shoes were brand new; E, the shoes were too dirty; or F, the stitching on the shoes was broken. And here we can see that question 25 is about high-heeled shoes, 26 ankle boots, 27 baby shoes, and 28 trainers. Now let's listen and choose the correct reason for questions 25 to 28.
So let's find some examples in the article of footwear that was rejected for recycling.
Okay, I think there are some in the interview with the recycling manager. Yeah, here it is.
Let's start with the lady's high-heeled shoes. What did he say about those?
He said they were probably expensive. The material was suede and they were beige in color. It looked like someone had only worn them once, but in a very wet field, so the heels were too stained with mud and grass to resell them.
Okay, and the leather ankle boots. What was wrong with them?
Apparently, the heels were worn, but that wasn't the problem. One of the shoes was a much lighter shade than the other one. It had obviously been left in the sun. I suppose even second-hand shoes should look the same.
Sure. Then there were the red baby shoes.
Oh yes, we're told to tie shoes together when we put them in a recycling bin, but people often don't bother.
You'd think it would have been easy to find the other, but it wasn't. That was a shame because they were obviously new.
The trainers were interesting. He said they looked like they'd been worn by a marathon runner.
Weren't they split?
Not exactly. One of the soles was so worn under the foot that you could put your finger through it. Well, we could certainly use some of those examples in our presentation to explain why 90% of shoes that people take to recycling centers or bins get thrown into landfill.
Now let's see the answers for these 4 questions. 25, the correct reason was E. 26, B. 27, A. And 28, C. And now on to 29 and 30. Choose the correct letter A, B, or C. You now have some time to read these 2 questions. Now let's listen and answer 29 and 30.
What did you think about the project his team set up to avoid this by making new shoes out of the good parts of old shoes?
It sounded like a good idea. They get so many shoes, they should be able to match parts. I wasn't surprised that it failed, though. I mean, who wants to buy second-hand shoes, really? Think of all the germs you could catch.
Well, people didn't refuse them for that reason, did they? It was because the pairs of shoes weren't identical.
They still manage to ship them overseas, though.
That's another area we need to discuss.
You know, I used to consider this topic, just from my own perspective, by thinking about my own recycling behavior without looking at the bigger picture. So much happens once shoes leave the recycling area.
It's not as simple as you first think, and we can show that by taking a very different approach to it.
Absolutely. So let's discuss.
Let's see the answers to 29 and 30. For 29, C, the shoes in the new pairs were not completely alike, or identical, as they said. And then number 30, the correct answer should be A, from a new angle. And on to part 4, questions 31 to 40. So you need to complete the notes below. Notice it's one word only, and that is important. So the topic of this part of the speech is tardigrades. You now have some time to read questions 31 to 36. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 36.
For my project on invertebrates, I chose to study tardigrades. These are microscopic, or to be more precise, near microscopic animals. There are well over 1,000 known species of these tiny animals which belong to the phylum Tardigrada. Most tardigrades range in length from 0.05 to 1 millimeter, though the largest species can grow to be 1.2 millimeters in length. They are also sometimes called water bears, water, because that's where they thrive best, and bear because of the way they move. Moss piglet is another name for tardigrades because of the way they look when viewed from the front. They were first discovered in Germany in 1773 by Johann Gaze, who coined the name tardigrada. As I say, there are many different species of tardigrade, too many to describe here, but generally speaking, the different species share similar physical traits. They have a body which is short and also rounded, a bit like a barrel, and the body comprises 4 segments. Each segment has a pair of legs, at the end of which are between 4 and 8 sharp claws. I should also say that some species don't have any claws. What they have are discs, and these work by means of suction. They enable the tardigrade to cling on to surfaces or to grip its prey. Within the body, there are no lungs or any organs for breathing at all. Instead, oxygen and also blood are transported in a fluid that fills the cavity of the body. As far as the tardigrade's head is concerned, the best way I can describe this is that it looks rather strange, a bit squashed even, though many of the websites I looked at described its appearance as cute, which isn't exactly very scientific. The tardigrade's mouth is a kind of tube that can open outwards to reveal teeth-like structures known as stylets. These are sharp enough to pierce plant or animal cells. So, where are tardigrades found? Well, they live in every part of the world, in a variety of habitats, most commonly on the bed of a lake, or on many kinds of plants, or in very wet environments. There's been some interesting research which has found that tardigrades are capable of surviving radiation and very high pressure, and they're also able to withstand temperatures as cold as -200 degrees centigrade, or highs of more than 148 degrees centigrade, which is incredibly hot.
Now we'll look at the answers for 31 to 36. Remember, spelling is important. 31, the answer is move. 32, short. 33, discs. 34, oxygen. 35, tube. And 36, temperatures. You now have some time to read questions 37 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 37 to 40.
It has been said that tardigrades could survive long after human beings have been wiped out, even in the event of an asteroid hitting the Earth. If conditions become too extreme and tardigrades are at risk of drying out, they enter a state called cryptobiosis. They curl into a ball, called a tun, that's T-U-N, by retracting their head and legs, and their metabolism drops to less than 1% of normal levels. They can remain like this until they are reintroduced to water, when they will come back to life in a matter of a few hours. While in a state of cryptobiosis, tardigrades produce a protein that protects their DNA. In 2016, scientists revived 2 tardigrades that had been tuns for more than 30 years. There was a report that in 1948, a 120-year-old tun was revived, but this experiment has never been repeated. There are currently several tests taking place in space to determine how long tardigrades might be able to survive there. I believe the record so far is 10 days. So, moving on. In terms of their diet, tardigrades consume liquids in order to survive. Although they have teeth, they don't use these for chewing. They suck the juices from moss or extract fluid from seaweed. But some species prey on other tardigrades, from other species or within their own. I suppose this isn't surprising, given that tardigrades are mainly comprised of liquid and are coated with a type of gel. Finally, I'd like to mention the conservation status of tardigrades. It is estimated that they have been in existence for approximately 500 million years, and in that time, they have survived 5 mass extinctions. So it will probably come as no surprise to you that tardigrades have not been evaluated by the International Union for Conservation of Nature and are not on any endangered list. Some researchers have described them as thriving. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Now we'll look at the answers for these last 4 questions. Remember, it's one word only, and spelling is important. 37, protein. 38, space. 39, seaweed. And 40, endangered. Now let's just confirm all of the answers to the full listening test. If you want to check your answers again, pause the video now and you can see them all there. Otherwise, count up your final score, and then this is how your score would convert to a band score in IELTS. So for example, if you got 27 correct out of 40, your band score would be 6.5. That's the end of the test. Thank you for watching this video. Good luck with your studies and your upcoming test if you have one booked. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Leave a comment below with your score or what you found the most difficult, and give this video a thumbs up. I'll see you again next time. Goodbye for now.